What if I told you that some of the most widely believed facts about space are completely wrong? For instance, did you know that the moon doesn't actually have a dark side? Or that the sun isn't yellow when you see it from space? These are just a couple of the many space myths that have been floating around for years, and today we're here to set the record straight. Scientists have spent decades studying the cosmos, and their discoveries have debunked some of the most persistent misconceptions about space. From black holes to the Big Bang, we're about to take you on a journey through 25 of the most fascinating space myths and the truths behind them. So, buckle up and get ready to have your mind blown as we explore the real science that's out of this world. By the end of this video, you'll not only know the truth about these myths, but also gain a deeper appreciation for the incredible universe we live in. Let's dive in. Now, turning to our first myth, let's tackle the idea that the moon has a permanently dark side. This is a common misconception, but the truth is, the moon doesn't have a side that's always in darkness. What people often call the dark side is actually the far side, the part of the moon that we never see from Earth. But here's the thing, the far side isn't always dark. Just like Earth, the moon experiences day and night cycles. As it orbits our planet, different parts of the moon are illuminated by the sun at different times. So, while one side is bathed in sunlight, the other is in shadow, and this alternates over time. The reason we only see one side of the moon from Earth is because it's tidally locked, meaning it takes the same amount of time to rotate on its axis as it does to orbit Earth. This creates the illusion of a permanent dark side, but in reality, every part of the moon gets its turn in the sun. To visualize this, imagine standing in a room with a single light source. As you turn, different parts of your body are lit up, but no part stays in shadow forever. That's exactly how it works for the moon. So, the next time someone mentions the dark side of the moon, you can confidently explain that it's not so dark after all. Now, turning to our next myth, let's shine some light on the idea that the sun is yellow. Many of us grow up drawing the sun as a big yellow circle in the sky, but here's the surprising truth: the sun isn't actually yellow. From space, where there's no atmosphere to distort its light, the sun appears white. So why does it look yellow to us here on Earth? The answer lies in a phenomenon called atmospheric scattering. When sunlight passes through Earth's atmosphere, the shorter blue wavelengths of light are scattered in all directions by the gases and particles in the air. This scattering is what makes our sky appear blue during the day. Meanwhile, the longer yellow and red wavelengths pass through more directly, giving the sun its warm, golden hue, especially during sunrise and sunset. Think of it like looking through a filter. Our atmosphere acts as a giant lens that changes how we perceive the sun's color. To put it simply, the sun is white, but our atmosphere paints it yellow. So the next time you see that glowing orb in the sky, remember, it's not the sun that's yellow. It's the way our planet's atmosphere bends and scatters its light. And if you could see it from space, you'd witness its true, brilliant white glow. Now, turning to our next myth, let's tackle the idea that there's no gravity in space. This is a common misconception, often fueled by images of astronauts floating effortlessly inside spacecraft. But here's the truth: gravity doesn't just disappear when you leave Earth. In fact, gravity is everywhere in space. It's what keeps planets in orbit around the sun and moons around planets. So why do astronauts float? The answer lies in something called microgravity. When astronauts are in orbit, like aboard the International Space Station, they're essentially in a constant state of freefall toward Earth. But because they're moving forward at an incredibly high speed, they keep missing the planet, creating the sensation of weightlessness. It's like being on a roller coaster that's always falling but never hitting the ground. This microgravity environment is what allows astronauts to float, not the absence of gravity. In reality, the force of gravity at the altitude of the space station is still about 90% as strong as it is on Earth's surface. So, the next time you see astronauts floating around, remember, it's not that there's no gravity, it's that they're in a delicate balance of falling and moving forward, creating the illusion of weightlessness. And that's the real science behind why they appear to defy gravity. Now turning to our next myth, let's clear up the idea that black holes are cosmic vacuum cleaners, sucking in everything around them. This is a dramatic image often seen in movies, but it's not quite accurate. Black holes do have an incredibly strong gravitational pull, but they don't act like giant vacuum cleaners. In fact, their gravity works much like that of a star. If you replace the Sun with a black hole of the same mass, Earth would continue to orbit it just as it does now. Nothing would get sucked in unless it got too close. The key difference with black holes is their event horizon, the point of no return where gravity becomes so strong that not even light can escape. But outside of that boundary, black holes behave like any other massive object in space. For example, if a star or planet passes too close, it can be pulled in, but objects at a safe distance remain unaffected. This means black holes aren't roaming around the universe gobbling up everything in their path. Instead, they're more like cosmic traps, only catching what ventures too near. So, while black holes are fascinating and mysterious, they're not the all-consuming monsters they're often made out to be. Understanding this helps us appreciate the true nature of these incredible objects and the role they play in the cosmos. Now turning to our next myth, let's tackle the idea that the Great Wall of China is visible from space. This is a widely believed claim, but the truth is a bit more complicated. While the Great Wall is an impressive feat of human engineering, stretching over thousands of miles, it's actually quite difficult to see with the naked eye from space. The wall's materials blend in with the natural landscape, making it hard to distinguish from the surrounding terrain. Even from low Earth orbit, astronauts have reported that the wall is not easily visible without the aid of binoculars or cameras. Satellite images do show the wall, but only under specific conditions, such as when the lighting and weather are just right. In fact, many other human-made structures are far more visible from space. For example, cities with their bright lights, large airports, and even massive dams like the Three Gorges Dam in China stand out much more clearly from orbit. So, while the Great Wall is an incredible achievement, it's not the most visible landmark from space. This myth reminds us that sometimes what we imagine about space doesn't always match reality. Understanding this helps us appreciate the true scale and complexity of both human creations and the vastness of space itself. Now turning to our next myth, let's clear up a common misunderstanding about the Big Bang. Many people imagine it as a massive explosion, like a cosmic firework lighting up the universe. But the truth is, the Big Bang wasn't an explosion at all. It was the rapid expansion of space itself. Think of it like blowing up a balloon. As the balloon inflates, every point on its surface moves away from every other point. There's no center to the expansion, just space stretching out in all directions. This is similar to how the universe expanded from an incredibly hot and dense state over 13.8 billion years ago. Scientists have even found evidence of this expansion in the form of cosmic microwave background radiation, which is like a faint glow left over from the early universe. This radiation is one of the strongest pieces of evidence supporting the Big Bang theory. So, while the term Big Bang might make it sound like a dramatic explosion, it's really about the universe growing and stretching over time. Understanding this helps us see the Big Bang not as a chaotic event, but as the beginning of the incredible story of our expanding universe. Now turning to our next myth, let's tackle the idea that you can't cry in space. It's a common belief that tears wouldn't form in microgravity, but that's not quite true. In reality, tears do form in space, but they behave very differently than they do on Earth. Here's why. On our planet, gravity pulls tears downward, causing them to stream down your face. But in the weightlessness of space, tears don't fall. Instead, they gather into little bubbles that cling to your eyes or float away if you blink too hard. Astronauts have even demonstrated this phenomenon, showing how tears form these tiny, shimmering orbs that hover around their faces. It's a fascinating reminder of how microgravity changes even the most basic human experiences. So, while crying in space might look a bit strange, it's definitely possible. And it's just one of the many ways life in space challenges our everyday expectations. Now turning to our next myth, let's clear up the misconception that the asteroid belt is a densely packed field of rocks, like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. In reality, the asteroid belt is far from being the chaotic, crowded zone it's often portrayed as. Picture this: the asteroid belt, located between Mars and Jupiter, contains millions of asteroids, but they're spread out over an enormous area. On average, each asteroid is about 1 million miles apart from its neighbor. That's like having a single pebble in a football stadium, hardly what you'd call crowded. This vast spacing means that spacecraft traveling through the asteroid belt have an extremely low chance of colliding with an asteroid. In fact, missions like NASA's Dawn spacecraft have navigated the belt without any issues, proving just how much space there really is. So, while the asteroid belt might look like a dangerous obstacle course in movies, the reality is much less dramatic. It's a reminder that space is far more vast and empty than we often imagine. Now turning to our next myth, let's tackle the common belief that the North Star, also known as Polaris, is the brightest star in the night sky. While Polaris holds a special place in navigation and storytelling, it's actually far from being the brightest star we can see. In fact, Polaris ranks as only the 48th brightest star in the sky. Its fame comes from its unique position almost directly above Earth's North Pole, making it a reliable guide for travelers and explorers throughout history. But when it comes to sheer brightness, stars like Sirius, the brightest star in our night sky, outshine Polaris by a significant margin. Sirius, part of the constellation Canis Major, is so luminous that it's often mistaken for a planet. So, while Polaris is incredibly useful for finding your way, it's not the star that lights up the night the most. This myth reminds us that sometimes what's most important isn't always the brightest. It's about the role it plays in helping us navigate the vastness of the universe. Now turning to our next myth, let's address the dramatic and often sensationalized idea that humans would explode in the vacuum of space without a spacesuit. While this makes for gripping sci-fi movie scenes, the reality is far less explosive but no less dangerous. In the vacuum of space, the lack of atmospheric pressure means your body wouldn't explode. Instead, the absence of pressure would cause the air in your lungs to expand rapidly, potentially damaging them if you held your breath. Your bodily fluids, like saliva and tears, would begin to vaporize due to the low pressure, and you'd experience swelling as gases in your body tried to escape. However, the most immediate threat would be the lack of oxygen. Within just 15 seconds, you'd lose consciousness due to oxygen deprivation, and without a spacesuit, you'd face fatal consequences within a couple of minutes. So, while you wouldn't explode, space is still an incredibly hostile environment for the human body. This myth reminds us that the dangers of space are real, but they're often more subtle and scientifically fascinating than Hollywood makes them out to be. Now turning to our next myth, let's explore the age-old belief that the moon has the power to influence human behavior. From tales of werewolves to claims of increased crime rates during a full moon, this myth has been deeply rooted in folklore and popular culture for centuries. But what does science have to say about it? The truth is, there's no credible evidence to support the idea that the moon affects human behavior. Studies have repeatedly shown no significant correlation between lunar phases and phenomena like crime rates, hospital admissions, or even mental health episodes. The myth likely stems from ancient beliefs and superstitions, where the moon was often associated with mystery and the unknown. Its cyclical nature and dramatic appearance during a full moon made it an easy scapegoat for explaining strange or erratic behavior. However, modern science has debunked these claims, showing that human behavior is influenced by far more tangible factors like environment, biology, and psychology. So, while the moon may inspire poets and storytellers, it doesn't hold any sway over our actions or emotions. This myth serves as a reminder of how easily folklore can shape our perceptions, and how science helps us separate fact from fiction. Now turning to our next myth, let's tackle the idea that the Milky Way is the only galaxy in the universe. This misconception might stem from the fact that, for much of human history, the Milky Way was all we could see with the naked eye. But thanks to advancements in astronomy, we now know that the Milky Way is just one of billions, yes, billions of galaxies scattered across the cosmos. In fact, the universe is so vast that it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. The discovery of other galaxies began in the early 20th century, when astronomer Edwin Hubble observed distant objects in the night sky and realized they were entire galaxies far beyond our own. This revelation completely changed our understanding of the universe. Today, telescopes like the Hubble Space Telescope and the James Webb Space Telescope have captured stunning images of galaxies billions of light years away, each containing billions of stars, planets, and cosmic wonders. These galaxies come in all shapes and sizes, from spirals like the Milky Way to ellipticals and irregular formations. The sheer scale of the universe is humbling, and it reminds us just how small our corner of it truly is. So, while the Milky Way is our cosmic home, it's far from being the only one out there. This myth highlights how science continually expands our horizons, revealing a universe far more vast and mysterious than we ever imagined. Now turning to our next myth, let's explore the idea that space is completely silent. This is a common misconception, likely fueled by the fact that sound waves can't travel through the vacuum of space. But that doesn't mean space is devoid of sound altogether. In fact, space is filled with electromagnetic waves, which scientists can convert into sounds we can hear. These waves, emitted by stars, planets, and other cosmic phenomena, carry information about the universe that we can interpret audibly. For example, NASA has recorded the eerie sounds of planets like Saturn and Jupiter, as well as the haunting hum of black holes. These recordings are created by translating electromagnetic vibrations into sound waves, giving us a unique way to experience the cosmos. While you wouldn't hear these sounds if you were floating in space, they reveal that the universe is far from silent. It's just speaking in a language we've learned to decode. This myth reminds us that even in the absence of traditional sound, the universe is alive with its own kind of music, waiting to be heard. Now turning to one of the most persistent conspiracy theories in history, let's tackle the myth that the moon landing was faked. This idea has captured the imagination of skeptics for decades, but the evidence overwhelmingly supports the fact that humans did indeed walk on the moon. One of the most compelling pieces of proof is the collection of moon rocks brought back by the Apollo missions. These rocks have been analyzed by scientists worldwide and are unlike any found on Earth, with unique mineral compositions that could only have formed in the moon's environment. Additionally, the Apollo missions left behind retroreflectors on the lunar surface, which are still used today to measure the distance between the Earth and the moon with incredible precision. These reflectors bounce laser beams sent from Earth back to observatories, providing undeniable proof that humans placed them there. Archival footage from the Apollo missions also shows the astronauts navigating the moon's low gravity, planting flags, and collecting samples, all of which would be nearly impossible to fake with the technology available in the 1960s. While conspiracy theories can be intriguing, the moon landing stands as one of humanity's greatest achievements, backed by irrefutable evidence. This myth reminds us to trust in the power of science and exploration to uncover the truth. Now turning to another fascinating space myth, let's explore the idea that the sun is on fire. Many people imagine the sun as a giant ball of flames, but the truth is far more incredible. The sun isn't burning like a fire at all. It's powered by a process called nuclear fusion. Deep within its core, temperatures reach an astonishing 15 million degrees Celsius, creating the perfect conditions for hydrogen atoms to collide and fuse into helium. This fusion process releases an enormous amount of energy in the form of light and heat, which radiates outward to warm our solar system. Unlike a fire which relies on oxygen to burn, the sun's energy comes from the immense pressure and heat at its core. To put it simply, the sun is more like a massive nuclear reactor than a campfire. This process is so efficient that it has kept the sun shining for over 4.5 billion years, and it will continue to do so for billions more. So, while the sun might look like it's on fire from a distance, it's actually a powerhouse of nuclear energy, lighting up our universe in ways that no ordinary flame ever could. Now turning to one of the most persistent myths in human history, let's tackle the idea that the Earth is flat. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence to the contrary, this myth has somehow endured for centuries. The truth is, the Earth is undeniably a sphere, and we've known this for thousands of years. One of the earliest proofs comes from the ancient Greek scholar Eratosthenes, who conducted a brilliant experiment around 240 BC. By measuring the angles of shadows in two different cities at the same time, he calculated the Earth's curvature and even estimated its circumference with remarkable accuracy for his time. Fast forward to today, and we have even more undeniable evidence. Modern satellite imagery provides crystal clear views of our planet from space, showing its unmistakable round shape. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station have also shared breathtaking photos of Earth, showcasing its curvature against the backdrop of space. Even everyday experiences like watching ships disappear hull first over the horizon or observing the curved shadow of the Earth during a lunar eclipse confirm its spherical shape. So, while the flat Earth myth might make for an interesting story, the science is clear. Our planet is a beautiful, round globe spinning through the vastness of space. Now turning to another fascinating space myth, let's explore the idea that the universe has a center. Many people imagine the universe as a vast, finite space with a central point, much like a galaxy or a solar system. But the truth is far more mind-bending. The universe doesn't have a center or an edge. Instead, it's expanding in all directions, and every point in the universe can be considered the center from its own perspective. To help visualize this, think of the universe as a loaf of raisin bread rising in the oven. Each raisin represents a galaxy, and as the bread expands, every raisin moves away from every other raisin. No single raisin is at the center of the expansion. Instead, the entire loaf is growing uniformly. This is similar to how galaxies are moving apart as the universe expands. Scientists discovered this phenomenon through observations of distant galaxies, which show that the farther away a galaxy is, the faster it appears to be moving away from us. This discovery, known as Hubble's law, supports the idea of an expanding universe without a central point. So, while it's tempting to think of the universe as having a center, the reality is that it's a vast, ever-expanding fabric of space and time, with no single point of origin or boundary. This concept challenges our everyday understanding of space, but it's a cornerstone of modern cosmology, helping us grasp the true nature of the cosmos. Now turning to another common space myth, let's tackle the idea that astronauts float in space because there's no gravity. This is a widespread misconception, but the truth is far more fascinating. In reality, gravity is very much present in space. It's what keeps the International Space Station and other satellites in orbit around Earth. So, why do astronauts appear to float? The answer lies in a concept called freefall. Astronauts and the space station are constantly falling toward Earth, but because they're moving forward at an incredibly high speed, about 17,500 miles per hour, they keep missing the planet. This creates a state of continuous freefall, making it seem like they're floating. Imagine swinging a ball on a string in a circle. The ball keeps moving outward, but the string pulls it back, creating a balance. In space, Earth's gravity acts like that string, pulling objects toward it, while their forward motion keeps them from falling straight down. This delicate balance is what we call orbit. So, while it might look like there's no gravity at work, it's actually gravity that makes this incredible phenomenon possible. Next time you see astronauts floating effortlessly, remember they're not defying gravity, they're mastering it. Now turning to another fascinating space myth, let's explore the idea that the stars are fixed in the sky. Many people believe that the stars we see at night are stationary, forming permanent patterns like the constellations we've come to recognize. But the truth is, stars are constantly moving, just like everything else in the universe. The reason they appear fixed to us is because of the vast distances involved. Stars are so far away that their movement is almost imperceptible over a human lifetime. However, over thousands or even millions of years, these tiny shifts add up, causing constellations to change shape dramatically. For example, the Big Dipper, one of the most recognizable star patterns, looked very different 50,000 years ago and will look completely different 50,000 years from now. This movement is due to something called proper motion, which is the actual motion of stars through space. Additionally, the Earth itself is moving, rotating on its axis and orbiting the Sun, which also affects how we perceive the positions of stars over time. Time-lapse images of the night sky reveal this slow but steady dance of the stars, showing how they drift across the heavens. So, while the stars may seem fixed in place, they're actually on an incredible journey through the cosmos, reminding us that even the night sky is ever-changing. Next time you gaze up at the stars, remember, you're looking at a dynamic, evolving universe, not a static snapshot. Now turning to a more light-hearted but equally intriguing myth, let's tackle the playful idea that the moon is made of cheese. While this myth is often shared as a joke or a whimsical story, it's worth exploring what the moon is actually made of. The moon's surface is composed primarily of rock and dust, formed from ancient volcanic activity and countless impacts from asteroids and comets over billions of years. Scientists have studied lunar samples brought back by the Apollo missions, revealing that the moon's crust is made up of minerals like basalt and anorthosite, which are similar to those found on Earth. These samples also contain tiny glass beads, formed when meteorites struck the moon's surface and melted the surrounding rock. Far from being a giant wheel of cheese, the moon is a rocky, dusty world with a complex geological history. The myth likely originated from the moon's pale, cratered appearance, which some might say resembles the texture of certain cheeses. But thanks to decades of scientific research, we now know the truth. Our lunar neighbor is a fascinating, rocky body that continues to reveal secrets about the early solar system. So, while the idea of a cheesy moon is fun to imagine, the reality is even more extraordinary. Now turning to another fascinating myth, let's explore the idea that Earth is the only planet with water. While Earth is certainly unique in its abundance of liquid water, it's not the only place in our solar system where water exists. Scientists have discovered evidence of water in various forms on other celestial bodies, challenging this long-held belief. For instance, Mars, often called the Red Planet, has polar ice caps made of water ice, and recent missions have revealed signs of liquid water beneath its surface. Then there's Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, which is believed to have a vast ocean beneath its icy crust. This subsurface ocean could contain more than twice the amount of water found on Earth, making Europa a prime candidate in the search for extraterrestrial life. Similarly, Enceladus, a moon of Saturn, has been observed spewing water vapor and ice particles from its south pole, indicating the presence of a subsurface ocean as well. These discoveries have reshaped our understanding of water in the solar system, showing that it's far more widespread than we once thought. So, while Earth remains the only planet known to support life, it's clear that water, a key ingredient for life, exists in surprising places beyond our world. This myth reminds us that the universe is full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered, and water may be more common than we ever imagined. Now turning to another captivating myth, let's dive into the idea that stars twinkle because they're small. This is a common misconception, but the truth lies in Earth's atmosphere, not the size of the stars. When starlight passes through our atmosphere, it gets distorted by layers of air with different temperatures and densities. This distortion causes the light to bend and scatter, creating the twinkling effect we see from the ground. Interestingly, planets like Venus or Jupiter don't twinkle nearly as much. That's because they appear larger in the sky due to their closer proximity to Earth. Their light is spread over a wider area, making it less susceptible to the atmospheric distortions that cause stars to twinkle. So, while stars may seem to shimmer and dance in the night sky, it's not because they're tiny, it's all about the journey their light takes through our atmosphere. This myth reminds us that sometimes the simplest explanations can reveal the most fascinating truths about the universe. Now turning to another intriguing myth, let's explore the idea that the universe is infinite. Many people believe the cosmos stretches on forever, but scientists tell us that while the universe is unimaginably vast, it's not infinite. The universe has a finite size, but here's the catch: it's also expanding. This expansion means that the universe is getting bigger over time, and scientists are still working to understand its boundaries and how far it truly extends. Think of it like a balloon being inflated. The surface of the balloon represents the universe, and as it expands, everything on that surface moves farther apart. But just like the balloon has a finite surface area, the universe has a finite volume, even if it's growing. This doesn't mean there's an edge or a center to the universe. It's more like a vast, ever-growing web of galaxies, stars, and planets. So, while the universe might feel endless, it's actually a carefully measured expanse that continues to stretch and evolve, offering endless mysteries for us to uncover. This myth reminds us that even the grandest ideas in science are grounded in evidence and discovery, challenging us to rethink what we know about the cosmos. Now turning to another fascinating myth, let's tackle the idea that the moon causes earthquakes. Many people believe that the moon's gravitational pull is strong enough to trigger seismic activity on Earth, but scientists have debunked this misconception. While it's true that the moon's gravity creates tidal forces causing the ocean's tides to rise and fall, these forces are far too weak to cause earthquakes. The moon's gravitational influence is significant enough to move vast amounts of water, but when it comes to Earth's solid crust, the effect is minimal. Earthquakes are primarily caused by the movement of tectonic plates, which are massive slabs of Earth's crust that shift and collide over time. These movements release enormous amounts of energy, resulting in the ground shaking we feel during an earthquake. While the moon does exert a slight tug on Earth's crust, it's not enough to set off these powerful geological events. So, while the moon plays a role in shaping our planet's tides, it's not the culprit behind earthquakes. This myth reminds us that even though celestial bodies like the moon influence Earth in subtle ways, the real forces driving seismic activity lie deep within our planet's dynamic interior. Now turning to the final myth on our list, let's explore the idea that space travel is only for astronauts. For decades, the image of space exploration has been dominated by highly trained astronauts, leaving many to believe that venturing beyond Earth is reserved for a select few. But thanks to the rise of commercial spaceflight, this myth is being shattered. Private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin are revolutionizing the way we think about space travel, making it more accessible than ever before. SpaceX, founded by Elon Musk, has not only launched satellites and resupplied the International Space Station, but has also sent private citizens into orbit. Their Crew Dragon spacecraft has opened the door for non-astronauts to experience the wonders of space. Similarly, Blue Origin, led by Jeff Bezos, has been developing reusable rockets and offering suborbital flights to civilians, giving them a taste of weightlessness and a breathtaking view of Earth from the edge of space. These companies are paving the way for a future where space travel isn't just for astronauts, but for anyone with the curiosity and resources to explore the cosmos. While it's still an expensive endeavor, the growing interest in space tourism suggests that the dream of traveling to space is becoming more attainable for ordinary people. This shift marks a new era in space exploration, one where the stars are no longer out of reach for those who dare to dream. Now, turning to the conclusion of our journey through these 25 space myths, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered. From the idea that the moon has a dark side to the misconception that space travel is only for astronauts, we've seen how science consistently challenges and corrects our understanding of the cosmos. Each myth debunked reveals a deeper truth about the universe, reminding us that curiosity and critical thinking are essential tools for unraveling its mysteries. Science doesn't just provide answers, it invites us to ask better questions and to rethink what we think we know. As we've explored these myths, one thing has become clear: the universe is far more fascinating and complex than many of our assumptions suggest. So the next time you hear a claim about space, take a moment to question it. Dive deeper, seek evidence, and let your curiosity guide you. If you enjoyed this journey through space myths, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more mind-expanding content, and share your favorite myth in the comments below. Together, let's keep exploring the wonders of the cosmos and uncovering the truths that lie beyond the stars.